Dr. Foojan Zeine, and welcome to the Inner Voice Show, the show that's about you, about what matters to you. And I talk and bring experts, and I invite them, and they accept to come, experts in the psychology matter. And today I'm really excited because Dr. Robert Johansen, who's been my guest before, and he's the author of the book Making Love. Yeah, you heard it. Making Love, the art of enjoying intimacy. And that's who we're going to be talking to. And if you want to know about him and go to the last interview that we had, you can go ahead to the website that you see on the screen, go to my YouTube channel, and on the YouTube channel you can find our previous interview. Dr. Robert Johansen, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back.
Of course, you are in Los Angeles area, kind of in Southern California area.
Southern Los Angeles, yeah. Cerritos area.
Cerritos, you have your offices there. And we talked about your book last time, and we had so many people talking about it, not only the title, obviously, Making Love, and it's not about sex, and kind of it is, because first you got to have the intimacy to have that sex,
right.
But the book is really about intimacy and two people together, and how they can bring the intimacy together. So tell us a little bit about the book.
Well, the book is written for lay people to try and understand how to work the difficulties, the complexities of the intimate relationship. As you know, the divorce rate hovers around 50%, and ironically, even marriage and family counselors divorce at or about the national average.
Yeah, we do.
So, what to me?
And we're the experts. That's
right.
it.
What that attests to me,
yes,
is the inherently complex nature of intimacy.
Yes.
And perhaps it suggests that those who've been charged with helping people survive the rigors of intimacy are under-equipped, that we need new treatment models that are more effective, that can help people stay together, in short.
So when we use intimacy, the word intimacy, for many of you probably the word means sexuality. There's a difference in that. There is an intimacy which is an emotional intimacy. And there's an assumption that when the emotional intimacy is there, that it leads to better communication, better sexual interaction, it will hold passion, and my guess is also that it would lead you to want to forgive the other person. It would lead you to want to be with the other person and be close. And therefore, you probably will end up resolving the situations faster. It's like the willingness to resolution is much faster than when you're not having that intimacy and you're kind of holding yourself back and you don't want to be close to that person because you're wounded or hurt or angry or all of that.
Absolutely. Some notable psychologists have talked about a sort of hierarchy of intimacy. At the peak, at the top of that hierarchy is sexual intimacy, physical intimacy, and that's the first one to go in our intimate relationship. Underneath that is the commitment and other communication issues, but the first and most fragile part of our intimate relationship is indeed physical intimacy. The slightest amount of acrimony, bitterness, anger, unresolved conflict can extinguish the fires of passion very easily.
That's very true. Because what it takes, with the title of Making Love, what it takes for two people to make love, it appears that they need to be open. They need to be feeling out there, like feeling their love and expressing their love. And out of that expression of love is the unity that gets created. So anything internally that covers that type of expression, where it's muddied with other types of expressions that are taking over. Like if I'm wounded, hurt, or angry at someone, it's kind of taking over the love part.
That's right.
So it can't be expressed as love. It only gets expressed as anger, or at most withhold.
Absolutely. And forecloses that anger, that unresolved anger, conflict, etc., forecloses on the possibility of physical intimacy.
Right.
Very, very readily.
Right. And I know that you have specific kind of exercises for couples to do in order to not only become aware of themselves in how they're contributing to the whole concept of the intimacy, but also how to communicate with each other from that place. Share with us some of those.
Okay, if I could give a sort of a prelude to what you just talked about. Intimacy is the most rewarding, fulfilling relationship of which any of us is a part.
Yes.
However, it's rife, it's loaded with difficulties and complexities. So intimacy confers a lot of wonderful things, but at the same time, in our effort to keep harmony, to avoid conflict, we underrepresent who we are sometimes.
Okay.
In an over-negotiation and an over-respect for the other, common mistakes we make in our intimacy is to over-respect the other, thereby under-respecting self, which induces tension in the relationship and doesn't make for peak sexuality or emotional connection.
So tell me a little bit about what you mean by over-respecting the others and under-respecting us, because most of the time, and this is interesting because as I hear it, and a lot of times I'm in the room with my couples, a lot of them go into the selfish mode, where in some level it appears that they're respecting themselves and not respecting the others. And what you are suggesting is, no, at times we are respecting the other person where we're not considering ourselves and who we are and what our needs are.
Exactly. That's right. When I over-respect my needs, I don't make place for yours.
Right.
That induces tension in the relationship. When I make too much place for yours, I'm literally deconstructing who I am vis-a-vis you in relation to you. I'm tearing and taking myself apart in subtle ways that I may not even be aware of, because my motive in the moment perhaps is predominated by a need to avoid conflict. It's ironic that the very things we do, the strategies we employ, the defenses that we employ to avoid conflict can actually induce it unwittingly without our being aware of it. So our model tries to teach a method of respecting other and self simultaneously. And that's very difficult. It's an intimacy skill that requires what we call intimacy intelligence.
Okay. First of all, can you please tell us about the name of your model?
The name of the model is Need Management Therapy. Good question.
Need management therapy.
Need management therapy.
Pretty much you have to become aware of your needs, respect them, and then manage them in a way that you're not only you're respecting yourself and your needs, and managing your needs, but also you're respecting, acknowledging, becoming aware, and communicating and respecting the other person's needs simultaneously.
That's right.
That's a lot of stuff to juggle, isn't it?
It is a lot of stuff to juggle, absolutely.
Okay.
The model is based on the prototypical or the original relationship wherein we learn, and usually in relation to parents, how to love self and other. In this culture, we pay a lot of homage to self-esteem.
We do.
Capacity to love self, capacity to love other. Well, where's the origin of that? And we're assuming that that origin lies, not very safely assuming, that the origin of that lies in the relationship with a parent. So what does a good parent do? The model distills across a range of parental functions 3 essential ones to make the model simple and applicable. What a good parent does is looks over into the child, sees what's there waiting to develop, and aligns the parental resources with that development. And that, we argue, is the only legitimate use of parental authority. So what am I doing? If I'm your parent, I look over into you, my child, my daughter, and I see what's there waiting to develop. And I align those resources with you. For example, if you're a 5-year-old who's just drawn a picture of a turkey at Thanksgiving time, I comment on it. I recognize that. You've expressed a need, let's say, to be artistic, and I comment on it. In doing so, as the person that you respect and love and who holds power over you in certain respects, you come to see yourself now a little bit more clearly, and you value yourself. So literally, by aligning my emotional supplies or resources in that way to be consistent with your development, I'm helping construct who you are. When I do that, I'm growing identity, I'm growing trust in you, and I'm growing a capacity for self-love in you.
As you were talking, this came up for me that when we go into an intimate relationship, and not only the first one, it's not only the first relationship we have, even if in our 10th relationship, whatever that we have, I'm also supposing that when we come together, although we might be adults, we've been to marriages, divorces, and all of that, but somehow as we come together, I'm assuming almost the same thing happens again. Although we're not a parent and child anymore, we're two equal adults, but somehow it's almost like we're training each other, we're mirroring each other, and creating this new kind of a space of a relationship where this space is the two of us versus who I was with another person, which that dynamic called for something else. So as you were talking about how our self-esteem grows and how we find identity with our parents, it just dawned on me, we find our own identity with each relationship and within a relationship, and we built that identity. Because I've watched people with high self-esteem, which have gone to abusive relationships and go, ooh, you know, the esteem has been trashed. And I've watched people with very low self-esteem from parents, they went into a relationship which they got loved and respected and mirrored in that way, and they just rose up in that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's a very good description, and it fits the model, totally consistent with the model. You brought to mind another aspect of the model, but I might be jumping ahead if I go to it too quickly.
I'll go ahead.
All right. We argue in the model, I think we can come back to that parental prototype that I talked about, original family of origin dynamic. But we talk about in the model that in the intimate relationship, magical things happen, very important things happen. Like, I get to know who I am in relation to you, like I get to know myself in no other relationship that is of lesser complexity.
Yes.
So you're actually mirroring back, as you use the word mirror. You mirror back to me what's developed in me and what's not so developed in me in the emotional, maturational, or developmental sense.
Yes.
And we believe that all forms of development hinge upon this more core notion of emotional maturity. When that seems to be set in place, all other lines of development unfold. But
so let me understand what you're saying. So what I'm hearing from you is that when two people get together, first when they mirror each other's strength, because for example, you know, somebody expresses their love in a very strong and beautiful way and the other one takes it in. It's like, oh, thank you and I love you, and so that's a mirror back of a positive conditioning. You let them know that you like that, so they continue to do that. So it's more of mirroring their best, their values, their strengths. The other part, as I was also hearing you say, that there might be somewhere that they're behaving a particular way, that it brings up my sensitivities, my anger, my vulnerabilities.
Yes.
So when those come up, those are also part of what this type of a relationship is bringing up, and it's an opportunity for me to work on those and get to know that who I am is being kind of shined upon in this relationship, and have the opportunity to kind of grow up, let's say.
Exactly.
Okay.
You put it so well. I really like that synopsis. That puts it very well. It's entirely consistent with our model. Again, you and I are doing similar types of thinking.
Right.
Looking at the same thing and coming up with similar results, maybe slightly different language, but similar. Yes, it's rare when our partners are evincing or manifesting positive behavior and we're reflecting that there's any problem in the relationship. Those things are relationship strengthening, relationship enhancing. It's when the not so well-developed things emerge into the relationship. And as you put very well, it's incumbent upon the person who has had that mirroring done, that reflection of what's not so developed. It's incumbent upon that person to take responsibility for that. Otherwise, the partner is left with, we might say, an unhealed wound kind of inflicted on them as well. When I manage my needs well, there's no problem in the relationship, although it can set up some kind of tension, but it's usually surmountable. It's when I have the worst part of myself, or the most underdeveloped parts of myself, activated, that tensions ensue or develop between relationships.
Right, and the underdeveloped parts of us are the ones who are not up to par sometimes with our age, or the way that we're supposed to be handling things, or that they're extreme emotions that are coming up, or we're coming up with thoughts and or assigning thoughts and meanings toward people that ourself or the other person which are not accurate. So any of those could be undeveloped where they're not up to par with the communication that is happening right here. So we're not like dealing with the communication, we're in our own world dealing with our own upset and reacting from our own upset versus dealing with what the conversation is, right? So such as if, you know, somebody says, you know, my mate comes in and they're tired and they're looking at, you know, we've cooked something together and they're just tired and they're not very, you know, being engaging in that. If I'm in a, you know, coming from an adult place, coming from a developed place, I would look at my mate and say, you know, I sense that you're upset, something's going on, tell me about it, or and allow a space where I can listen and go on. The underdeveloped part of me might say, you know, who does he think he is? I've developed, you know, I've done so much to, he probably doesn't like it, and then go into my issues, maybe my cooking is bad, and then like, I'm bad, you're bad, and I go through all of this, and then, you know, suddenly this thing blurs out of my mouth, is like, what's wrong? You know, you don't like my cooking? And, you know, go into that way of dealing with the conflict. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
With my theatrical sense?
Yeah, that was very theatrical, very well done.
Okay, good.
I like that. I like that. You know, I'm kind of hopping around, so maybe at some point we can kind of piece together a lot of things. But here's one of the premises of the model. One of the basic assumptions in this treatment model is that when couples come in and sit down on my couch in my office, fighting, upset, they haven't been able to resolve their problems at home. One of the things I try to point out to them is the relationship actually can be argued to be doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Intimacy is supposed to reveal what's strong in us and what's not so strong in us. It's supposed to do that because it gives us an opportunity, when looked at in that way, to see what's developed there, what isn't, and then for individuals to take responsibility for the furtherance of that development. So when couples come in and sit down on the couch, they're arguing, and they're arguing from fundamentally legitimate needs. The model argues that they couldn't argue were it not for the fact that each brought to the other fundamentally legitimate needs. I'll give you an example more concretely. Recently, or quite often, let me say it this way, quite often couples come in and she'll complain that he never listens. He never listens. He will complain that she speaks to him in a naggy, angry, critical, demanding tone of voice. Now, on the surface, it looks like, well, we should take a look at that and see if we could redesign their communications. But what we do with the model is we look at each partner, and I'll study one partner, say the wife who feels like she's not being heard. And I look at her and say, what happens when you make demands to be heard? Her comment usually is, he becomes even more deaf to me. Oftentimes. He withdraws in defensiveness, or he counterattacks, also in defensiveness. Then I point out to her that what's wrong with you wanting to be understood by your husband? Do you see anything wrong with wanting his understanding, his sensitive, respectful understanding? I'll look at her and I'll ask that question. So, there's nothing wrong with that. Then I turn to the husband, ask the very same question. Do you see anything wrong with your wife wanting to be understood, respectfully sensitive most of the time? And he'll say the same thing. Then I'll turn to the husband. Now, before I turn to the husband, what's just happened there, when it's done right, I don't always do this right, but when it's done right, he is looking at her now in a different way and seeing that fundamentally there's nothing wrong underneath the nagging.
Right.
Underneath the nagging, there's a legitimate need that she's arguing from. She couldn't argue were it not for the fact that there's a legitimate need there. Then I turn to him and I say, underneath that complaint you have that you're not being spoken to in a way that you like, what's underneath that? And we'll search for a while and we'll come up with another legitimate need. The legitimate need here is to be spoken to in a respectful, requestful way, rather than having non-negotiated demands laid upon him, which cause him to withdraw or counterattack. Then I say to him, is there anything wrong with you wanting to have a respectful, requestful wish made of you? No. Turn to her, ask the same question. Now we've got couples who were arguing before, now validating the fundamental legitimacy of each other's needs. And then I make the point, it's not the fact that each of you has brought to the other an illegitimate need, it's how you're managing those needs that have caused you the problem.
So if we can agree and know that we ultimately agree and have chosen someone who ultimately we probably agree with their essence. So if they have a essence that's coming out as a human need, that human need is acceptable to all of us as humans as acceptable concept. So it's something that it doesn't appear to us as unacceptable. Like, it's acceptable that a human being has the right to live. It's acceptable that a human being has the right to be respected or has the right to feel like they want to be seen. Because every one of us kind of share those needs. So when we hear somebody else has that need, we also share it so we can accept it. So the mode of communication or the variety of how that need happens might be different, and people might have a conflict in the method of it. But as I hear you, you put it into perspective of you understand each other's need, you give value to each other's needs, so the main concept of your conflict is agreed upon. Now we just have to figure out that there's a difference in the way, one, that you're communicating, or is a different way that you, each one of you might fulfill that need. Mm-hmm. And that's why you're not noticing the other person offering it, such as if people have a different way of needing to express love or to receive love. Mm-hmm. And they might be fighting over, how come you give me love that way, or how come you said it that way, or I want it this way and you don't give it to me. Then you're valuing the underneath concept of the need, which is we both need love. So in that they agree, because they each feel it themselves that that's an appropriate human need.
Exactly. And when you've got formally arguing couples validating the fundamental legitimacy of each other's needs, and as you were pointing out, there are certain universals, so to speak, fundamental needs that we bring to each other. That's the basis for the argument. That's what fuels the argument is, after all, I bring to you, my wife, a very fundamentally legitimate need to have respectful requests made of me.
So instead of being angry at you, I can have compassion for your need. And at the time that I have compassion for your need, then the area opens up for me to also feel safe with you and hold that space of love and compassion and acceptance, then to even be able to hear in that communication what the need is and what the modality of exchanging that needs could be.
Absolutely. And I'm more likely to get that very sort of understanding from you when I've been able to manage that need well. Hence the name, Need Management Therapy, Making Love. When I bring to you, say, a need to be respectfully understood and have requests made in a respectful way, and I draw attention to that, then how can you argue with me? Like I did or illustrated in the therapist's office when we each, when we looked at the fundamentally legitimate needs each partner brings to the other. When I draw attention to that, as opposed to my withdrawing when you nag at me, or my counterattacking when you nag at me, when I can draw attention to the fundamental legitimacy of my need to be spoken to in that way, then the possibility for better communication exists.
There's also a responsibility for each person to also gain knowledge and awareness of what their needs are and how to communicate that in the relationship to upkeep the intimacy.
That's right.
Because if I don't know what my needs are and all that I'm reacting to from my maybe less developed place, you're bad and wrong and I have to defend myself against you, that communication doesn't come to a place of even me looking at myself like, what is my need? What is my request? And how about if I just ask what I need from my partner versus first making them wrong so they can go into a defense side, let me attack them fully until they're probably, stripped out of all their ego, and then say, okay, I need love now that I've stripped them completely out of their ego, and they're like, how am I going to get love from them? So the awareness of that type of need inside, or I need respect, I need love, I prefer it to be stated this way to me, and what are your needs? Then we do minimum damage. We don't have to damage each other so bad that the path to coming back to the love and intimacy becomes so muddled.
Yes, exactly. We have different vocabulary for describing the same phenomenon between couples. If I bring a legitimate need to you, my wife, I want to call your maximum audience to the legitimacy of that need.
Yes.
Then you won't argue with me like that couple I keep referring to in therapy. If she says to him, it means so much to me when I get your sensitive understanding. The last time that you did that, my heart warmed like never before. When I get your understanding, and that means probably more to me than anything else, I feel cared for. I feel understood. I feel like I've been divested of any feeling of isolation when I'm in your company. That means a lot to me when I get your respectful understanding.
Sure.
When it's put to him in that way, he's not hearing the nagginess, the bitchiness, all that other stuff that goes on. He's not hearing that. His attention's being called to the fundamental legitimacy of her need. How can he argue with her to that? Is that hard to do? Absolutely. In the emotional throes of the moment, that's very, very hard to do. But it's worth trying because the gains are so great. Make sense?
Makes a lot of sense because my experience with a lot of couples who have come in is that they make a lot of assumptions about the other person and they keep removing themselves, shutting the doors and trying to protect themselves, which is completely against what they said they wanted to do when they wanted an intimate relationship.
That's right.
You know,
That's
so it's like they strive to come in, being in a relationship, get married, do all of that, because they had a vision of being happy, being close, being in love, making love, and being together. And then what happens inside the marriage is very, very quickly, they'll see each other as the enemy who is trying to get something from them, and they're not willing to give it, and they'll hold back. And even sometimes when they know what the other person wants and needs, they're like, I'm not giving it to you just because you didn't give it to me. You have to give it to me first before I give it to you. Now you can see when we talked about undeveloped state. Right. So those are the pieces where it keeps people aside. And there's a high cost. There's a high cost in feeling left, feeling alone, feeling sad and depressed, feeling consistently agitated and angry, unfulfilled, and that's the cost. That when we don't strive in creating that love and intimacy, we don't realize that the cost of that is so high for us, and we just think we're protecting ourselves. But it's not just a protection. That type of a protection leaves us in our own cocoon, which has all of these other pieces into it.
Yes, absolutely. Again, you're encapsulating the model, using words of your own to describe the model that we're advocating. The intimate relationship is in a league of its own. It can't be compared to any other relationship that we're a part of.
Very true.
Because it does those things you just described. It reveals me for all my strengths and weaknesses. And it also reveals another thing. It's very critical according to our model, and that is, how well do I manage the needs I bring to you, my wife? The model advocates that we identify our needs. When we do that, we literally construct a sense of who we are in relation to our partner, because, as I said before, intimacy can be so rigorous that it can really deconstruct a sense of who we are in an effort to avoid that conflict. But when I responsibly identify what my need is, recognize its fundamental legitimacy, and then go about representing it in a way that balances respect for you, my wife, with respect for me at the same time. Not an easy chore. That's challenging. And when I do that, I keep the relationship intact throughout the course of communication.
It's very interesting because, like you say, most of the time when we are caught into an issue, very much we see it as it's either you or me. It's not, it cannot be both of us. So I'm either going to win or you're going to win and I'm the loser and I'm not going to like you for it. So this concept of respecting myself and you, coming from a space that we both need to be here to be intimate. If it's just me, there is no intimacy with anybody because I just declared I'm in this space, I'm the winner, and you're the loser and you need to leave. So knowing that intimacy, it takes two of us to be together, then automatically, hopefully, we'll get that if it takes two of us to be together, there has to be room for the two of us. There has to be respect for the two of us. And since we're two different human beings and have different needs, then there has to be a space for two different needs and two different models or 10 different models of expression. And when that allowance is there, then it opens up for the conversation to create the intimacy.
Exactly. The moment I find myself waxing defensive or becoming defensive, I know that I'm not managing my need well. If I'm trying to win the argument, as you were trying to argue, if I'm trying to win an argument, out-logic my partner, out-persuade, cajole, manipulate, control, those are all instances of poor need management. And we may get by with that on a given instance, especially if our partner's feeling ego-inflated for whatever reason. If our partner's ego-robust, we might be able to get by with that. But on the long-term basis, that won't work. It induces too much tension. There has to be this balance of self and partner respect. So if I'm the husband who would like you to respectfully request, as opposed to nag and demand and judge and criticize, I need to say it's something like this. Can I get a moment of your time to talk about something very important to me? And when I tell that to my clients, they think, my gosh, that sounds like a business meeting.
Yeah, I have to make an appointment.
Yes. And I say, yes, there is an investiture, a certain investiture that has to take place. I want to prepare the ground for a good piece of communication. That means I have to respect my partner. If I rush you with this demand, hey, I want you to, I'm taking a chance that in that moment you may not be ready to field my question or much less respond to it. So, I ask you for a moment of your time. Are you busy? Can I take a moment? If you say, yes, I thank you for that. That means the world to me to get your understanding. The other day, you asked me in a very polite, kind way if I would help out with X, Y, and Z. I really liked the way you approached me. That meant a lot to me. And it actually elevated the probability of my doing exactly what you wanted me to do, even though I had some other plans in mind. That's an instance of good need management. It shows respect for you, my wife, but it's also showing respect for the fact that I need to be spoken to in a sensitive, respectful sort of way.
It also brings up something, which is most of the couples, they stop communicating with each other about the good stuff. It's like instantaneously, okay, they'll tell each other, I love you, you know, you're this, you're that. In the time of making love, they'll do a couple of those things. But the rest of the conversation that happens about the two of them, and I'm not talking about business of life, you know, like, did you pay this bill, or where are you going tonight, or not that type of a conversation, but this type of a conversation, which is, I noticed something really, really nice. I noticed that this is how you spoke to me, and the way that it landed on me. It really made me want to do this for you, and I felt good about myself. We rarely talk like that. We usually wait until our mate does something that pisses us off, and it's like, can I talk to you? You did this, and it pissed me off. So this this sentence of "can I talk to you?" now it's like a bell conditioning of, oh my God, disaster is going to come. Somebody right now, that sentence is going to be anxiety producing. But the way you were also sharing in your model, which is, we take these spaces where we acknowledge, we're aware of all the good stuff that is also happening, and putting that into the pot of the intimacy, and saying, you know what, I really noticed this, and it was beautiful. And you leave it at that, and thank you. And then when that happens, the next time I'm saying, I would like to talk to you, do you have a moment? They know that it's something intimate. It could be a positive, it could be a request for a change of behavior that I didn't like, but now it's not anxiety producing. Now it's not like, oh my God, I'm gonna get scolded. It's more like, oh, we're gonna have an intimate conversation.
Exactly.
It could be positive, it could be something I need to change, but I know that it's gonna be deep, and it's gonna bring us together more. We're getting to the last moments. Anything particular you would like to say to wrap up the model for our audience?
Yes, if I can do that succinctly and clearly. The model, as you've been expounding upon very, very well, and you've overlapped with many of the notions of the model, looks at the ideal parent. What does an ideal parent do? An ideal parent identifies the child's needs, legitimatizes those, and then helps the child in age-appropriate and socially appropriate ways over the course of their development know how to manage those needs. Now, if that's what created self-esteem and other esteem and love and respect in the original relationship, that's exactly what we need to be doing in the intimate relationship. So when I, in relation to you, my wife, when I identify what my needs are, recognize their fundamental legitimacy, and then represent them in a way that is effective, and that means balancing self and other respect, as you and I try to demonstrate. Then I express the need and the deepest feelings associated with that need. That's what I try to do in that example. In the past, when you've shown me respect, it really has meant a lot to me when you're asking me to do something. Then when I do that, I'm making this deep integration within myself. I'm speaking from my most vulnerable emotions, because I will be no closer to you than I am first to myself.
Of course.
So that achieves, that's a precondition or for me getting close to you, being able to get close to myself first. And the last step of the model, this is one a hard one, is that I must keep in the back of my mind that the management of my need accomplishes more, actually, than the gratification of my need. If I pursue the gratification of my need at all costs, I'm on dangerous territory, emotional territory. But if I follow the steps of good need management, I'm going to grow my respect for myself, and as I do that, I can be sure that there's a commensurate respect you're growing for me in return, because of how I manage myself in relation to you.
So if the only thing I'm thinking about is that I'm going to win out of this argument and I'm the only one who needs to get what I want, then we're not creating that space of intimacy. However, if I learn that I have the right to my need and I need to learn to manage it in the respect with also your needs, and as I go along within a long-term, obviously, relationship, in systematically managing it, because these needs don't just come once and they're gone. They're there every day.
Exactly.
So it's not like, okay, I'm going to win this time, and I'm going to win tomorrow, and I'm going to win, you know, so it's not about the winning, because it's going to be, you know, until the rest of our life, every day these needs come up. So it really is about how to manage them, where we're considering both of us, and sometimes it's going to be my way, sometimes it's going to be your way, sometimes it's going to be a third way that we create. But knowing that my commitment is to managing, not winning the game, not having the end result be my way, is the key to your model.
Exactly. And when I am managing my needs well, I'm gratifying needs at a higher level that can't be defined as, I got you to say it to me the way I like.
Right.
I can grow my esteem for myself in relation to you, independent of whether you gratify my needs or not, just by virtue of the kind of person I am in terms of how well I manage my needs.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for coming to my show
Thank
again
you for having
and
me.
talking about the book, Making Love, how to create, enjoy, and sustain intimacy. Making Love. Dr. Robert Johansen. His phone number is on the screen if you'd like to call him or make an appointment. He's in Cerritos, California. And you can also order the book at Amazon.com.
At Untreed Reads. Untreed Reads. It went e-form.
Oh, it's an e-form.
It's
Untreed Reads.
In San Francisco Publishing House.
Oh, perfect. So you can have that, or just call Dr. Johansen and obtain the book. So thank you so much for coming, and hopefully we'll have you again as you work on the model and create more and more, because I know every time we're working on the model with our clients, it just kind of expands itself to all the different ways.
That's right.
Yes. And thank all of you for being with us, and until next week, create a wonderful world for yourself. Bye-bye.